Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Greatest Summer in Baseball History, How the '73 Season Changed Us Forever, by John Rosengren, narrated by Barry Abrams. Man's mind cannot grasp the causes of events in their completeness, but the desire to find those causes is implanted in man's soul. Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace. 1. A Mr. October afternoon. Listen. You can hear it in the crowd. The 49,333 at Oakland Coliseum that afternoon. Tense, excited, sold. They believe their A's can spoil this Mets miracle. The tremendous dash from last place at the end of August to within a game of the World Championship. No matter, it's Game 6, the Mets up 3-2 in the series. These fans have assigned their allegiance to these A's, the star-studded lineup of the defending champs. Bando, Tennis, Campaneris, Rudy, Hunter, Holtzman, Fingers, Blue, and Reggie. Reggie. He steps to his place. First inning, man on, 2 out. Reggie digs in. The white pumas anchor in the dirt. The Sonny Liston-sized biceps wiggle the 37-ounce bat in his powerful hands. Reggie. His swagger, his manner, his style. He's like no one else. He's Reggie. He feels the eyes of the 49,333 on him, along with those of the millions in front of the television sets from the Bay Area to Flushing Meadows. Feels good. His first World Series, the big stage, an October afternoon promise to supersize his status. Reggie stands poised to bust open his own image. Watch this. The 1973 season had already proven itself a watershed year that changed baseball forever. Race, money, rules, raging factors in the country's social revolution had marked the national pastime. A black man who had begun his career in the Negro Leagues threatened the supremacy of a white man's legend, a mythical landmark universally identifiable by a simple number, 714. In New York, a multi-millionaire shipbuilder with an ego the size of Yankee Stadium bought America's team at a bargain basement price and began to flex his wealth in the league's largest market, sparking baseball's economic revolution. In a culture reluctant to change, American League owners had broken ranks with their National League counterparts and introduced the designated hitter, a marketing measure desperate to reclaim fan interest dissipated by the growing popularity of professional football. Already that season, baseball had undergone an extreme makeover that provided a demarcation in its history. There was baseball before 1973 and baseball after 1973, 2 distinctive eras. Now Reggie at bat in the Fall Classic would animate the season's final act. While Willie Mays watched from the bench, Reggie would enact a changing of the superstar guard so complete that it would transform the media's coverage, the fans' perception, and the game's image. That afternoon, the age of the modern superstar was about to dawn. Willie Mays was the best player of his generation, some argue of all time. An all-star 24 times, a 2-time MVP, he was the kind of player for whom the Hall of Fame was built. The Sporting News had recently declared Mays the best player of the past decade. He held more Major League Baseball records in more categories than any other player in history. His day was nearly done. By October 1973, he was ready to retire, but he wanted to close out his career as a champion. In Game 6, the 42-year-old Mays watched Reggie bat from what had become Willie's customary spot at the back end of the Mets dugout. Fail or triumph, Reggie did everything big. He was coming off an MVP season, batting .293 and smashing a league-leading 32 homers and 117 RBIs while scoring more runs, 99, than any other American League player. Yet that same season, he struck out 111 times, or once every fifth at bat. Shame claims the flip side of glory's skinny coin. Reggie could be the victim of his own hype. After hitting 47 home runs in his sophomore season, he had started calling himself Mr. B&B, as in bread and butter, the guy who delivered the big hits, then endured a 3-year slump for a player of his potential, averaging fewer than 30 home runs and less than 75 RBIs a year. He batted .261 over those seasons. Before the series began, Reggie had announced to his teammates with characteristic swagger, "I'll take care of you." But his bat had not been as large as his mouth. In the first 5 games, he had only 5 hits and 21 at-bats, a .238 average. Worse, Mr. B&B had driven in only 2 runs and stranded 17 teammates on base. In Game 5, he had come to bat 3 times with men on and failed to bring any home, failed even to hit the ball out of the infield. Reggie faces Tom Seaver, the Mets ace, aware that he has failed to carry his teammates. If he doesn't show them his big stick today, he will be chastised as just a big mouth. Minutes earlier, Reggie had stood at his locker, getting ready for the pregame introductions. Teammate Gene Tennis walked over, placed his hand on Reggie's shoulder, and said, "I sure would like to play tomorrow." Tennis walked away, but the message was clear. "Back up your mouth. Win one for us." On the Mets bench, Willie watches to see what Reggie will do. Reggie raises his 37-ounce bat. Seaver throws his fastball. Reggie slices a drive into left center. He hustles into second with a double, and Joe Rudy scores from first to give the A's an early lead. It's what Willie would have done once upon a time. Reggie wanted to be Willie. Mays had been his boyhood hero. "I started thinking about playing ball when I found out who Willie Mays was," he said. In 1966, as a minor leaguer with the A's affiliate, the Modesto Reds, Reggie drove 100 miles to San Francisco with a teammate to watch Willie play. The 20-year-old was mesmerized, following Mays's every move, admiring his basket catches, his big swings, even his casual trot toward the dugout. "I got to see Willie Mays play in person for the first time," he writes in Reggie, the autobiography. "Willie Mays, in the flesh." His teammates, having listened to Reggie's adulation of Willie, called him Buck, Willie's nickname. Reggie didn't mind. In a rare fit of humility, Reggie had once admitted that he would settle for being 1/2 the player Willie Mays is, but he was on his way to becoming close to Willie's peer. Jackson had a powerful arm, fast legs, he ran a 9.6 hundred-yard dash, and hit with power. In 1973, he hit a home run every 17 at-bats, best in the majors. He was big and strong. At 6 feet and 205 pounds, he had 1 inch and 25 pounds on his idol. His biceps measured 17 inches around. He also possessed thunderous 27-inch thighs that powered his big swing. Reggie didn't win batting titles. He would never hit better than 300 in a season, but when he made contact with the ball, he usually clobbered it. At 42, Willie knew how good he had been. Reggie, at 27, was just sensing his possibilities. The two were marked by their different eras. Willie was born at the start of the Depression. Reggie was the first of the baby boomers. Willie was a rookie in 1951, shortly after Jackie Robinson had hurdled baseball's color barrier, but when Jim Crow laws still ruled. A black man from the Deep South, Mays came to the majors via the Negro League. Reggie, an African-American with Puerto Rican roots, grew up in a Jewish suburb of Philadelphia and played college ball before breaking into the big leagues in 1967, amidst the turmoil of the Vietnam War and America's Cultural Revolution. Willie remained old school. Reggie epitomized the '70s me generation. Willie performed. Reggie entertained. Reggie was such a hot dog, his teammate Darryl Knowles said, "There isn't enough mustard in the world to cover Reggie Jackson." Both players could beat you. Willie would show you how. Reggie would tell you. He wanted you to see him beat you. He wanted you to revel in the glory of Reggie. Willie was legend. Reggie was hype, albeit hype that often delivered. Reggie's ego drove the zeitgeist of the new superstar. Nobody else talked like Reggie. Nobody else played with his style. Not in baseball, not in any sport. Muhammad Ali came the closest. He brandished the same brash words, flaunted the same sparkling talent, and developed a media presence with daring charisma. But Ali was a lone wolf in the ring. Reggie did his thing among teammates, an even bolder stroke of ego. Among other team sports, Joe Namath, with his good looks, big game talent, and famous Super Bowl III claim, approached Reggie as a peer, but Namath slurred his prediction under the influence. Reggie spouted his stuff stone cold sober. Nobody talked or played with his hubris. You couldn't help but notice. If he could back up that talk on the field, his style would change the way reporters covered the game and the way other stars comported themselves. He would transform the very image of baseball. Jackie Robinson changed the color of the game. Reggie infused it with color. He broke the duller barrier. Reggie comes to bat again in the third with 2 outs and Sal Bando on first. Once again, he raises his 37-ounce bat and waits for Seaver's delivery. Seaver, whose arm hasn't fully recovered from Game 3 after only 3 days' rest, can't reach his usual high speeds on his fastball, his money pitch. He is pitching more with his head than his arm. He had wanted to rely on his outside fastball to strike out Reggie, but instead Seaver chucks sinkers over the plate, hoping to force a ground ball. Reggie lifts one of those sinkers to right center, slugging another 2-out double. That scores Bando and puts the A's up 2-0. In the top of the 8th, Catfish Hunter has set down the first Mets batter and Seaver is due up. Mets manager Yogi Berra knows Seaver has spent what he had on the mound. He needs a pinch hitter. That is a role Willie could play. By 1973, Willie's body, once powerful and seemingly chiseled from marble in the days before players lifted weights and gulped supplements, had started to break down. The speedy legs had slowed, the powerful arm had weakened, the sharp eyesight had dulled, the quick wrists had lost their snap. He still wanted to win as bad as ever, but these days his body denied him. That season, he had appeared in only 66 games, batted .211, punched 6 homers, stolen 1 base, and hit into 10 double plays. He had become a memory of himself. But he was still Willie, one of the game's greatest clutch players. His 22 extra-inning home runs remain a record, far more than the next closest total of 16 hit by Babe Ruth. Willie is ready to bat for Seaver. Yogi looks down his bench, past Willie Mays, to Ken Boswell, a lifetime .248 hitter who has managed only 25 hits in 1973. No doubt, Yogi figures the left-handed batting Boswell will fare better than the right-handed Mays against the right-hander Hunter. Boswell makes good on Yogi's hunch, promptly smacking a single to right field. A's manager Dick Williams replaces Hunter with Darryl Knowles. Knowles gives up a pair of singles. Boswell scores, cutting the A's lead to 2-1. The Mets have the tying run on third and the go-ahead run on first. They are that close to clinching the World Series. Knowles strikes out Rusty Staub on 3 consecutive fastballs. His work done, Knowles departs for Raleigh Fingers, who records the final out of the inning. Willie can only watch. Reggie leads off the A's half of the 8th. He would finish his career with a .357 lifetime World Series batting average, nearly 100 points better than his career regular season average and the best career World Series slugging average, .755. The higher the stakes, the better Reggie played. He loved the spotlight. The brighter, the better. "When they turn on the light, they turn on Jackson," he said. Yet in this his first World Series ever, he still has something to prove. He punches Tug McGraw's pitch into center field for a single. The ball skips past the Mets center fielder Don Hahn, and Reggie races all the way to third. 2 batters later, he scores standing up on Jesus Alou's sacrifice fly. A's lead 3-1. Reggie's first year in the big leagues had been Willie's last really good one. In 1966, Mays batted .288 and notched 159 hits, 29 of them doubles, 37 home runs. He knocked in 103 runs and scored 99. Then he started his slow fade. In the last 7 years of his career, he would never hit more than 28 home runs in a season, 1970, drive in no more than 83 runs, 1970, and never score as many runs. His production would trail off until his dismal final season. But Willie could still win ball games. He had delivered the game-winning hit in the deciding game of the National League playoff that put the Mets into the World Series. Yogi had pinch-hit Willie for Ed Kranepool in the 5th inning with the bases loaded and the score tied. Willie swung too big. He smashed the ball straight into the dirt. It leaped high into the air. By the time it came down into pitcher Clay Carroll's waiting glove 30 feet up the third base line, Willie was safe at first and the go-ahead run had scored. In the 9th, Fingers retires the first 2 Mets batters. Yogi wants to pinch hit for the right-handed Hahn. He looks down the bench. With his team down to its final out, Willie is ready. Yogi looks past Mays once again to Kranepool. He opts for a left-handed batter against the right-hander Fingers. His hunch had worked last inning. Perhaps it will work again. Kranepool pops to second. Game over. In the Mets clubhouse, the champagne stays corked. Willie quietly changes into his street clothes. Across the way, reporters in the A's clubhouse gather around the game's hero, Reggie Jackson. He has accounted for all 3 of the A's runs, driving in 2 and scoring the 3rd. Reporters crowd around him with their microphones and miniature writing tablets, ready to transmit his words to the world. Reggie joneses on the moment. Mr. October has arrived. Game 7 beckons. 2. The Money Game. Flip the calendar to 1973. In January, President Richard Nixon was sworn into a second term the week after members of his administration went on trial for the Watergate break-in. Shortly after the inauguration, the administration signed a ceasefire agreement with Hanoi and began withdrawing troops from Vietnam. But it was too late. The war and Watergate had already erased the American public's innocence. The people had grown suspicious of their leaders. A number of beginnings or firsts launched the country on an unknown course. The Supreme Court legalized abortion, NASA sent the space station Skylab into orbit, the World Trade Center opened, the federal government started the Drug Enforcement Agency, Federal Express began shipping packages overnight, KISS played its first concert, the United States Postal Service raised the cost of mailing a letter to 10 cents, the Pop Top appeared on soda and beer cans, Schoolhouse Rock started teaching kids between Saturday morning cartoons, the Bionic Man, valued at $6 million, debuted on the tube. And at the movies, something beyond comprehension was happening to a little girl who could only be saved by the exorcist. The shift from the familiar to the unknown provoked anxiety. In the year's top pop hit, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree, Tony Orlando sang about a man who fretted over how he would be received back home. Meanwhile, anti-war protesters taunted vets returning from Vietnam. Marlon Brando refused his Best Actor Oscar for his role in The Godfather to show his solidarity with the members of the American Indian movement who had taken hostages at Wounded Knee. In a Gallup poll, Americans voted New York Yankees fan and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in brokering the Vietnam ceasefire, the most admired man in the world. Kissinger, who would later be accused of war crimes and human rights abuses, was even considered a sex symbol. Henry Kissinger, a sex symbol. Strange days indeed. The upheaval in society had extended to the national pastime, which underwent an extreme makeover in 1973. Labor clashes strained the owner's plantation mentality. Players explored new freedoms. The rules changed to allow one player on each team simply to bat but not to field. A black man in the South chased the hallowed record of a white man. The greatest player of a generation retired, replaced by a new breed of superstar. A powerful personality took the helm of America's team. The game's status quo crumbled in 1973, and it sought an altered equilibrium. The turbulent times induced the evolution of a new breed of baseball. To assess the health of the game, one had only to look to its flagship team. The once proud Yankees, dynasty of past decades, had become losers. In 1972, they lost 76 games and $1 million. The team's value plummeted. The Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS, which had purchased the Yankees in 1964 for $13.2 million, prepared to sell at a loss. Forbes magazine predicted that the national pastime would follow the fate of America's team and suggested that Major League Baseball could well vanish from the scene in 20 years. The magazine was correct in its perception of the Yankees as baseball's bellwether, but wrong about the direction the team and the game would head. Forbes hadn't counted on the arrival of George M. Steinbrenner III. No sooner had the ball dropped in Times Square than the Yankees announced that a limited partnership headed by the Cleveland shipbuilder had purchased America's team. Mike Burke, who had been running the Yankees for CBS, told a gathering of the press at the Yankee Stadium Club on January 3rd that he and Steinbrenner, the two general partners in a limited partnership of 15 owners, had purchased the Yankees for $10 million. The final price would actually be less, $8.7 million, after CBS bought back a couple of parking garages. The purchase price, well below what the broadcast company had paid 8 years earlier, though above the value CBS carried on its books, seemed low to many, considering that owners had paid $10 million or more for expansion teams in Seattle and San Diego within the past 5 years. A considerable perk in the deal was New York Mayor John V. Lindsay's pledge of $24 million to renovate the crumbling 40-year-old Yankee Stadium over the next 2 years. The city's final bill would eventually run $106 million, part of the $1.5 billion deficit Lindsay would leave his successor. Steinbrenner, the Yankees' fifth owner since the team began in 1903, bought the team at a bargain basement price. Ka-ching! The boss had pulled off his first major deal in the game. The following week, at a lunchtime press conference, Steinbrenner and Burke introduced the other members of the partnership. The partners included John DeLorean, the General Motors vice president who would later introduce his own eponymous automobile, Thomas Evans, managing partner of the New York law firm where Nixon was previously a partner, James Nederlander, theater owner and Broadway producer who had teamed with Steinbrenner on the musical Applause starring Lauren Bacall, and Gabe Paul, past part owner, president, vice president, and general manager of the Cleveland Indians who had initiated the Steinbrenner coup by introducing George to Burke. They staged the press conference at the 21 Club, the fashionable Midtown Manhattan restaurant where athletes, sports bosses, and television movers and shakers populated the tables. The same place that previously had spurned Steinbrenner. Prior to January 3, 1973, when his secretary tried to book a table for the Cleveland shipping magnate on his New York business trips, The best he could rank was an anonymous upstairs table at the obscure hour of 4 in the afternoon. Finally, his purchase of the Yankees provided the occasion for his coming-out ball, making his entree into Gotham's social scene and stamping his mark on the game's landscape, one that he would completely reshape. The boss, driven by his thirst for power and fueled by love of profits, would make money the predominant factor in baseball, one that would eclipse the lively ball, lowered mound, and even juiced players in its influence. For this was a business, and nobody understood the race to the bottom line better than George M. Steinbrenner III. George had learned at an early age how to make a buck. Born July 4, 1930, in an affluent area of Greater Cleveland, he started in the egg business as a 9-year-old, gathering and selling the eggs of the 200 chickens, ducks, and geese his father had bought him. The young boy dutifully recorded the inventory and sales of the George Company in a notebook. When George left for boarding school, he sold the chicken business to his sisters for $50. Making money seemed the one way he was capable of pleasing his demanding father, whom his oldest child and only son George once described as a superachiever that I would never match. Not to say he didn't try. The old man had graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. After completing his prep studies at Culver Military Academy in Indiana, George had his application to MIT denied. He attended Williams College instead. Henry was an NCAA hurdling champion. George practiced in his backyard on a set of hurdles he built in shop class, but he did not win the medals his father had garnered. Instead, George excelled in the glee club with Stephen Sondheim. I had a better voice, Steinbrenner claims. The closest George came to showing up his domineering dad was by rescuing the family business, Kinsman Marine Transit Company. George joined his father at the Great Lakes Shipping Company in 1957 after a 2-year hitch in the Air Force and stints coaching high school baseball, semi-pro football, and college football at Northwestern University. The big steel companies were building fleets of their own to ship ore, endangering independent companies like Kinsman that worked the Great Lakes routes. In 1960, 30-year-old George saved the family business by securing a commitment from Jones and Laughlin Steel of Pittsburgh for Kinsman's ore carriers to transport hefty annual amounts. He eventually raised enough money to buy out his father. In 1967, George led a group that took over the American Shipbuilding Company and merged it with Kinsman Marine. The company, with yards in Cleveland, Tampa, and 6 other cities, was struggling when George took over, but by the time he bought the Yankees, he had tripled its volume to more than $100 million. His early practice in the egg business had paid off. When George III bought the Yankees, he piqued the curiosity of New Yorkers and sports fans alike. They wanted to know more about this 42-year-old Midwesterner whom the New York Times reported was involved in numerous activities, including business, politics, sports, show business, and civic and charitable functions, considered one of the most effective fundraisers in Cleveland, and, though a Protestant, was named Man of the Year for 1972 by Cleveland's Israel Bond Organization. Steinbrenner told them he grew up a closet Yankees fan. Being in Cleveland, you couldn't root for them, but you would boo them in awe. Steinbrenner was not a stranger to the sports world. In addition to the coaching forays of his youth, he bred racehorses and was a part owner and vice president of the NBA Chicago Bulls. From 1959 to 1961, he had operated the Cleveland Pipers of the National Industrial Basketball League and later the American Basketball League. The discerning observer could glean clues of Steinbrenner's personality from his past involvement that revealed him to be an unusual owner, an intense competitor, an innovator, and a troublemaker. The new Yankees owner expected to win. Kinsman Hope, his 2-year-old thoroughbred, had won the Remsen Stakes 2 months earlier. His Pipers had won 2 championships. The new Yankees owner liked to work deals. He had signed Ohio State All-American Jerry Lucas, which prompted the NBA to include the Pipers as its 10th team, though the deal fell through when Steinbrenner could not raise the $250,000 entry fee.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?